Hey. Can I put this little light? Hey guys. Who's ready to vote? Hey. Who's ready to vote? I look cute, thank you. I felt like this was a good voting hairstyle. How you guys feeling today? I meant that as a real question. Good, that's good. Hungry, eat something. I did dye my hair. Highly blessed, love it. Mellow as fuck. I could never. Givion's great, we love Giveon. Okay, you guys. Thanks for coming. That's what she said. This is now week 3. I'm really excited. This one we're talking about Congress. Before we get started, I just want to encourage everyone to go, I'm going to write it in here, to ballotready.com. As we get closer, I just want everyone to be able to know what the fuck they're voting on. That's the point of all of this. And at ballotready.com, they break everything down for you with specific candidates depending on your zip code and where you live. And it makes everything way easier. So don't forget to do that. Oh, wait, I forgot to pin it. Hold on. Pin comment. So go to ballotready.com and do your research. Also, check your registration at kianaledé.com/vote. And today we're talking to Jorge L. Vasquez Jr. He is the director of the Power and Democracy Program with Advancement Project, a national, nonpartisan, multiracial policy communications and legal action organization. In this role, Jorge leads a dynamic team of attorneys and advocates in protecting the voting rights of people of color. Important, combating voter suppression and supporting grassroots campaigns to restore voting rights to returning citizens throughout the United States. He is also a 2020 resident fellow at Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics. Before I bring Jorge in, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, put them in the little question and answer box thing, and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. All right. Let's see if he's in here. I don't see him yet. Where you at, Jorge? Also, if you have any questions that I might be able to answer or Jorge might be able to answer from the other lives, if we didn't get to it yet, put it in there too. Let me see if there's anything now while we wait for our friend. I am going to save this live just so you guys know if you have to exit. I'm going to be putting it on my Instagram. It should be on IGTV. And it's going to be in segments, and we're going to have time codes so it's easy to see all the answers that you're looking for. Jorge, if you're in here, can you just comment so I can see you? Oh, I was covering it. Sorry. I always do that. And who's ready to vote? You're used to me covering the mic? I know. Do you guys feel like you're learning stuff from this? Because I feel like I am. I hope you guys have a pen and paper. No, that's old school. Sorry, Granny again. I hope you guys are taking notes on your iPhones. Oh, hold on. Sorry. It's ballotready.org, you guys. That's how you know it's educational.org. Don't listen to me. Listen to Jorge. Yes, Chelsea, she's going blonde. She's going strawberry blonde. I don't know where our friend is. Please don't. Lashes are popping. Thank you. Just got them done today. Chelsea, come hug me. I love you. Have you ever actually colored your hair like a color from the rainbow? A color from the rainbow? Like not blue, not yellow. No.
Yeah, I'll say at this point, we probably just make everything going.
So, does new music? New music is coming. You like my bed? Thank you. I made it into like my dream bed from when I was a kid. You'd love to see lilac hair. Love it. Okay. Jorge's on his way. Jorge, when you come in, just comment so I can see you. Por favor. Hola. Hi, Dina. I only speak a little Spanish. I wish I knew more. Maybe that should be the next live segment that we do, is you guys teaching me Spanish. Who's ready to vote? Did he comment? Bitch. I don't use any lip plumping gloss. I miss you. I need your security. Someone asked what's my nationality. Daisha. Give it to him. Let him know. Jordy V10 asked, what's this about? This is an Instagram Live segment for I Am a New Voter. There we go, Daisha. Black, Native American, Mexican, and that other one she said. This is I Am a New Voter. I started this with I Am a Voter, and it's basically just a way to get us all educated. I have no idea. Didn't have any idea. Now we're 3 weeks in, so I know a little bit more. But I didn't have any idea of how to vote, what I was voting on, what people even do after they get voted in, and what the different parts of the government are. And I wanted to make a more informed decision. But everything that I was finding was just really hard to read, really hard to find, and also really hard to read and comprehend. So I wanted to make I Am a New Voter where we could get people educated and learn with some fucking plain ass language. Okay, Jorge's here now. I see him. Hey, we don't learn it all in school. I wish we did. I see him, but it just says it's waiting. Sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. It says unable to join. Let me try it again. I'm holding you. Everything you needed, I could do. I could do it all for you. Wish that it was true. You guys can see me fine, right? Boy, you left me here too long. Lord, I know I do. Daisha, you're wild. Okay, here we go. Let's try this other one. My connection's good for once. I know, it's because I'm back from Florida. No, I have actual internet. Connecting. Yay!
Yeah, what's going on? Thank you for doing this. So sorry about the connection problems. Not sure what was going on.
Can you unlock your screen? It has to turn.
Yep, will do.
Oh, there it is. Hi, Jorge.
This up. Um,
How you feeling today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
I think we're cool. But yeah, thank you for doing this. This is amazing. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting Advancement Projects National Office to this. Sorry that the technical difficulties is crazy, but it's all part of it, right? I'll loop it in. I'll inform everybody what we're talking about and how something even as simple as technical difficulties has to do with our political system and the census.
Oh, love that. Love a
Yeah.
circle back. Okay, I'm gonna put the advancement project in here so people have the other one since you're on your personal.
Yeah, please do. So for
Um,
some reason, it wasn't letting me in when I was trying to log in with Advancement Project. We were on it, and I see myself on it, but I'm not sure what was going on.
yeah, it's so weird. Well, we're here now. That's all that matters. It's just
Yeah, thanks.
a project, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, so let's get started because I'm really eager to learn. So I always start with this very first question. What the fuck is Congress?
So Congress is essentially, believe it or not, under like a normal presidency, a normal administration, is a equal co-branch of government. So in the United States, we have three separate and equal co-branches of government. One is, the president's office. The next is the legislature, which includes the Senate and Congress. So that's what Congress is. They create the laws. The president's supposed to enforce the laws. And then you have the judiciary that's supposed to interpret the law.
Okay.
And that's what Congress is.
And how do they get elected?
So they get elected by us, the people. Currently, there are 435 seats in Congress. And every 2 years, whoever your Congress representative is up for re-election. And in many places, the congressional member is elected by only like 10,000 or so votes, which is crazy because they represent on average at least 700 people. Can you imagine 700,000 people and yet only 10,000 people are voting for these members to be elected?
Wow. And so they get elected during the election.
They get elected during even election years. So they'll get elected now in 2020, then they'll be up for re-election in 2022, 24, so on and so forth. So it's every 2 years. And it's also important for your viewers, like Congress has the bag, like literally they're in charge of the money. Congress creates this budget. They create how much we get for schools, how much we get for highways, how much the military gets. Just about any financial aspect of the U.S.'s budget, which is $700 billion annually, is all decided by Congress.
How much?
700 B.
Shit.
Right? Can you imagine that? But can you imagine only 10,000 people? Like, you look at some people might be able to get people on live. Look at like something like D Nice has been doing, right? Like 100,000 people at a time. Or look at like the versus battles. Your amazing platform right now, I'm a New Voter, often viewed more than 100,000 times. Like if you ran for Congress right now, you'll win. Your people come out and we'll change this game, right?
Yeah, I would never do that though. That's barely get this shit correct, and like, there's no way.
Nah, you're doing it though. This is so important, right? And I think for individuals who also have questions around just what the political process is at Advancement Project's national office, we put together trainings for the community. And no training is too small or too large. So if you're just a new voter, if you're a student, if you're just trying to figure out like, what is this system of politics? What does it mean when I hear there are three equal co-branches of government? We'll help you break it down. We'll help you set up meetings with individuals. Just reach out to us. Advancement Project is our, is our handle on all social media platforms, and advancementproject.org also is our website.
Amazing. Okay, so can you explain to me the difference between the Senate and the House? Like, what makes them different?
Sure. So the biggest difference is that there is less senators than there are Congress, of people in Congress. So together they compose
Wait,
of five.
aren't part of the Congress?
No, so they're not part of the Congress.
Oh.
They're part of the legislative branch, and so the legislative branch is confusing, right? It makes no sense, right? It's like, just make everything one thing, let people vote and say what their power is. But the way it is that the Senate, you have 2 senators per state, so there's only 100 senators. Whereas for Congress, you have Congress members, you have 435 seats, right? And for the Senate, you only have 100 because it's just 2 per state. And the Senate has so much power. So the Senate usually, like, they have the confirmation powers, right? So if you're going to appoint somebody to a presidential appointment, they have to vet it and say it's okay. So a presidential appointment is things like Secretary of anything, Secretary of Education, a person who's literally in charge of the way our education system is. The Secretary of HUD, which takes care of our housing and our building, our infrastructures. The judiciary, the Supreme Court, right? Like, if you watch the presidential debacle on Monday, you probably heard we've confirmed 300 people to the federal bench. And what that means is that the president nominates and the Senate confirms. So the way it works out is that there was always supposed to be a check and balance. Like, we didn't want, when the founders framed the Constitution and founded America, their goal was to make sure that no one had too much power, no one was above the law, and that everybody could check the next person. So the president has the power to appoint, but the Senate has to confirm them, right? The president has the power to go to war, but he doesn't have the money to pay for war. He has to go to Congress. If there's a misunderstanding between whose authority is what, then that's when the judiciary comes in, because the Congress and the Senate make the laws, but it's up to the judges to interpret it, right? We probably all have seen something in the news and you're like, wait, how did that happen? Or heard of a law and seen it apply differently to the way our friends and families, right? To our friends and families. And that's because the law isn't necessarily just black and white. And the people who determine what the law means are judges. And judges sometimes come out and with the same facts may have different decisions. So in the federal level, you have a district court, and that's the lowest court on the federal level. And then you could appeal that to the Court of Appeals. And then the highest court in the land is the Supreme Court of the United States. And that's where you just did a show. It was great. Justice Ginsburg just passed away, where she was one of 9 justices on the Supreme Court. And the way Justice Ginsburg had got onto the Supreme Court was then President Clinton had nominated her, and then the Senate voted for her, and then she was approved after that.
Wow. Okay.
I know it's a lot, right? But I think you generally want to think of, okay, nobody's supposed to be higher than the next person, right? It's just 3, right? And you think in 3, it should be ideal, majority wins, right? But what you have is you have 3 co-equal branches of government. You have the legislature, which is Congress and the Senate. You have the judiciary, which are your judges. And then you have the executive office, which is the president. And they each have really different powers, and they're not supposed to overlap. So for example, the executive branch, they just enforce laws. So they shouldn't be creating laws, right? And sometimes you'll hear like, oh, there's an executive order and that executive order is illegal or it violates the law. And what that means is that the president isn't there to make law, right? We have an entire branch of government whose sole purpose is just to do that. And that branch of government would be Congress and the Senate. And then you have the branch of government that interprets it, which is the judiciary. And that's why you always hear the president saying, well, we're just going to go to the Supreme Court, right? And that's not normal at all.
Okay. So how does the Supreme Court interact with the legislative branch?
So completely separate. In fact, the Supreme Court, there was a case, Marbury versus Madison. And in that case, it's one of the first Supreme Court cases. They said, we can't even give you an advisory opinion. We don't want it to seem like, hey, we work for you or we work together. No, we're separate, equal co-branches of government. And the way we work is we only work when something is actual or immediate. So before you could bring a case to the Supreme Court, you need to be able to have an actual harm. That harm needs to be able to be addressed. And it can't necessarily be like a fake harm or hypothetical harm. It's just this idea of like, nah, we're all equal. We're all adults. And we should be each doing our job. And we're not going to step in your shoes. You don't step in our shoes. And that way we keep everything at the same level.
So they don't talk to the legislature. They don't talk to the
judges
at all. Okay, so judiciary branch does not speak to the legislative branch unless they try to make some law that doesn't seem.
Not even then. Not even then. The only time the justices on the Supreme Court respond is if there's a case before them. And many times, in fact, when you see like an opinion from the Supreme Court, it'll say like, this isn't our job. Like, our job is to interpret law, is not to create law. And if you want to change, then you need to go to your legislatures. And we call on the legislatures to act. So it's actually the reverse. Sometimes you might get a Supreme Court decision that says, listen, our system is broken in this field. Let's say immigration. You need to fix it. Create laws. Do your job, basically.
Right. So the real importance of the legislative branch is to go to them to make laws that we abide by, help us every day.
Right. And we should be able to control that, right? Like, we have the power to meet with our local electeds, but we also have the power to vote. 35 days, we could vote in new legislators and vote on people who have your interests at heart. I think what happens so often is that we're jaded by the system. I know for me personally, my story is crazy because when I think about it, like, my father was in jail when I was a kid, right? He was in prison. And my mother was like super political, went to vote every time there was an election and would take us. And we would go together as a family, but there would only be women there, right? Like, there was no men there. And the reason being is in the 80s in New York City, if you had a felony conviction, you weren't eligible to vote. You could not vote. So what would end up happening when you lived in an over-policed area, whether or not you did a crime, and we know that people, you know, some people may commit crimes, other people may just say, listen, I'll take this felony so that way I could come home and go back to my job or take care of my family. And what ends up happening is that people aren't able to participate in the system. And in not being able to participate in the system, you get disenfranchised. And what that did for me as a kid was that made me think that voting was feminine, right? Like, how crazy that is that you think that, you know, men just don't vote because you live in a community that's over policed and your people aren't engaged, or people don't speak to your needs of your community.
Wow. That's really interesting. So, okay. So the judiciary branch, the legislative branch, they don't speak at all.
So, yep, they don't speak at all.
Okay.
They don't speak.
Very clear for everyone. Okay, they don't speak at all.
Or they shouldn't speak, right? Like, that's the general rule. The general rule is that because they're going to be the decision makers. So let's say the Senate and the president are beefing. They're going back and forth on who has what power or whether or not we could do something. that can end up in court. And if it ends up in court, then who's going to hear it? The judiciary. So you don't want them to be biased, right? So they're like, nah, you guys figure it out. And then if it comes to me, then I'll decide. But the only time I'm deciding is in a courtroom. I'm not gonna, meet with you separate. We're not friends. We're not gonna talk about hypotheticals, right? And like I said, if people want to do the research, is that case that I said, Mulberry versus Madison, which touches that. But yeah, this stuff is all confusing. It's never simple, right? And that's what makes it harder sometimes.
I like how sassy the judiciary branch. They're like,
They don't play. But you know why though? Yeah, let me tell you how dope the system is in this area, right? Because they have lifetime appointments. Imagine being able to have a job for the rest of your life that you want, and you can make these decisions, right? Like in an ideal world, like you have me for a life appointment. Guess what? I don't work for nobody but the people, and I don't work for nobody but interpreting what this law says, right? So I'm not going to be influenced one way or another because you literally cannot fire me. I mean, there's few exceptions, but for the most part, you can't fire anybody.
well, and that's why it's really important to vote and care about who gets voted.
Right. And who even gets tapped for that kind of position. Right. And I think that's what's going on right now, where it's like there's a spot open. Well, who are you going to recommend to fill that spot? And then the Senate, who's going to vote for or against, right? To see if that person becomes the next Supreme Court justice, or even just the federal judge, right? Because there's so many cases that, settle before trial, and these are handled by federal judges. I mean, you think about marijuana. Many of the arrests and felony convictions are for like simple possession of marijuana, right? So you want a judge who will be able to kind of go through the facts and be fair.
Okay. So going back to Congress, how many votes does it pass a law? About.
So to pass a law, you need the majority, right? And to pass a law, you need both houses to be with it. So usually what happens right now is we have a divided house, right? And the House refers to Congress and to the Senate and the House of Representatives, right? We have the House of Representatives and then we have the U.S. Senate. And let's say Congress passes something, right? They pass a resolution. They say, we want to amend so that way voting could be, fairer. We want to make sure that individuals have access to the ballot. And then the Senate comes and says, no, you need the majority in both places to agree with it. And right now, the majority of Congress are Democrats. And on the Senate side, the majority of the senators are Republican. And not only the majority, but enough to actually like win. Right? Like if all the senators voted one way, then you'll win. If all the Congress people voted one way, then you'll win. And this idea was that way you'll be even and split power instead of just leaving it with one political party, because the idea is like you guys need to compromise. You guys need to work together to make the nation better.
Okay, but that doesn't always happen, does it? Like different.
Nah, not at all. I mean, right now we're seeing that, right? Like we see where it's like, why isn't this happening, right? I'll give you an example. You hear of like a stimulus package because of COVID, and you hear that Congress says one thing and then the Senate says something else. So, it's like, or if the Senate wants to pass this, but Congress doesn't want to pass that would be an example.
Oh, we lost him. Come back, Jorge. Come back. Wait, I'm sorry. You have to rewind like a couple of this because it froze.
Yeah, no, we basically have one branch of government that's dedicated towards creating laws. And that branch of government is known as the legislative branch, and it consists of the House of Representatives, which is essentially Congress, and the Senate.
Okay, House of Representatives is Congress and Senate.
Right.
So the big umbrella is House of Representatives.
Correct. Or the legislative branch is usually how it's referred to. It's fine, whichever one you want.
Okay.
Right. We basically have people who we elect to create laws, and those people that we elect to create laws are members of the House of Representatives, Congress, or they could be U.S. senators.
Okay. 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 Processing. Sorry. Okay. So can you tell me what a Census Bureau is?
Yeah, the Census Bureau is a federal bureau that's tasked with knowing how many people are in the United States, knowing about demographics and things of that sort. And I think what you're getting at is just like, what's the decennial census, right? The 2020 census was going on right now. The census is an opportunity for our community to be counted, our community to be heard, and essentially it's just a snapshot of the country, right? The Constitution says that every 10 years, we need to take account of everyone who lives in the country as of April 1st. So what happens then is we count literally all the people in the country, right? And then we use that to determine funding. So that $700 billion budget I was talking about, that gets allocated through how many people live in a specific place. So let's say if we're talking about Arizona, right? Your hometown or home state. Then we see how many people live in Arizona versus how many people live in, let's say, Maryland versus how many people live in New York. And what happens then is you divide the budget appropriately, right? Like based on how many people live in each place. And you also decide how many members of Congress each state gets based on how many people live in that state. So it's super important as it relates to like your political power, right? But I think what happens is, don't nobody want nobody knocking on their door, right? I think what we know is, especially within the Black and brown community, whenever the government knocks on your door, they're not knocking on your door to do something good, right?
Right.
They're doing stuff, they have no knock warrants, right? We see that they're coming to take away our children. We see that they're coming to arrest somebody. Mm-hmm. But for other people who are not, in the communities of color or people of color, when the government knocks, they might be giving them something, right? Like my grandfather's a veteran. When he came back from the Korean War, he didn't get a GI Bill. You know what I mean? He didn't get the same benefits that white soldiers got, right? But traditionally, in those communities, when the government comes knocking on white people's door, they give them something, right? That relationship is completely different. But right now, today, we have an opportunity to really ensure that our people are counted on the census. And the census is really just about money, power, and respect, like that old Locke song, right? So we're talking about $700 billion, right? And all it takes is 10 minutes, and anyone can fill it out. Doesn't matter if you're a citizen, if you're not a citizen, it's safe. It's super easy. You could just go to my2020census.gov to fill it out. And in like less than 10 minutes, you'll be able to kind of participate and make sure that we have accurate data, and that data could be used for everything you need, right? So businesses, for example, right? We had trouble connecting earlier today. Sometimes we have trouble connecting because our communities don't show up in the census, right? So, and when I say that, like cell phone towers and internet connections, those are based on how many people live in a certain area. And what the cable providers and cell phone companies depend on is the census data to make sure that they got the amount of people that are there. So for example, you could be performing somewhere and now we have 50,000 extra people in the stadium watching you trying to upload something, and it's slow as all. Because they're trying to use something that might be meant for only 10,000 people, because there's only 10,000 people that live in that community.
Right.
Right. And then also things like we order everything from our phone these days, right? Like when I think of like Uber Eats or Grubhub or something like that, those
Wait,
That's
say the last.
yeah. So stuff like Uber Eats, Uber, Lyft, jumping in those things and putting in an address and it taking you somewhere. It knows of that address because all the addresses are uploaded with the Census Bureau.
Okay. So, and able to be for things allocated correctly, we should be participating in the 20 census so that we.
Heck yeah, because think about it this way. If only half of us show up, then it's only going to be half of the resources that we deserve, right? That means the overcrowded schools. That means during a pandemic, we don't have enough hospital beds. That means during a pandemic like we're in right now, during COVID, we don't have enough masks for people, right? Like that was a real thing in the beginning.
Right.
And it's because of things like the census, because that's supposed to be the most pure data that the country depends on. And the private sector as well as the public sector depend on it equally, right? Like when they're trying to pitch you to a label before you got your deal, when you won your contest, it was like, you one of 40,000 people that competed and knocked it out the box to get your deal. And that's important because they get to know your fan base, right? A lot of our small businesses, Black and brown businesses, don't get the loans that we need or the support that we need because our people don't show up in the census, so they don't necessarily know who our demographics are in a quantified way, right? And we need to make sure that we show up because, and then we could get people we want into office, right? Into Congress, into the Senate. We can make sure that our schools are properly funded. And the important thing to remember is that because the census is for 10 years, something like undercounting a 5-year-old means that that kid's resources for the next 10 years are going to be lacking, right? Wow. So that's going to be kindergarten through high school, right? That they're not going to have, they might be in an overcrowded class. They may not have enough books for school, different resources like that.
Okay, that's very good to know. It lasts for 10 years. You guys, the deadline is today, so I heard. So go to 2020census.gov and fill it out as soon as you can.
So and then also show up because there's an opportunity for us to gain something. Even if there's people will talk about, oh, there's going to be an undercount and your state might lose representation. Yes, maybe that's true. But especially within the Black and brown community, it's also true that the state could lose representation and our communities could gain representation, which means we could lose a congressional member that might be, that may not have our interests, but we could gain congressional members who have our interests or who even look like us if we show up. And the crazy thing about it, it's just 10 minutes real quick. You go online, you fill it out. Even if you should have received the card in the mail, but there's an option, you don't have the card. Just fill out your address. It'll pop it up. You'll put your name super quick. And then the important thing too to know is that the laws are so enforced that nobody can ever access your information, right? Title 13 says that if you even try to touch this information or share this information, you're going to jail, you're getting fined. And one thing that's been for certain is that not even this president has tried so many times to go to court around the census, and he's lost each and every time.
I'm seeing in the comments too, I haven't done any research on this, but I just want to share this for anybody who needs to hear it. Young actually said Indigenous and people of color as themselves as the first position when filling out the census for your household. Do you know what that does, Jorge?
Can you say that question again, please?
Indigenous and people of color assign themselves as the first position when filling out the census for your household. Do you know what that does?
Yeah, you need to make sure that you essentially are counting everybody. And we live in a world where, like growing up, I had uncles who kind of stayed with us. I grew up in public housing, right? So it's this idea of not sharing who really lives in your household. But the census is actually the one thing where you actually want to make sure you count everybody, right? If they sleeping on your sofa, right? Because we know we probably have a relative that's supposed to be there for 1 week and ends up there a few years, a few months, right? And they're using your resources. They're walking on the same streets as you. They're driving down the same roads as you. They're going to the same stores as you. And you want to make sure that there's enough resources there for your community. So we need to make sure that we're counting people. And it's also important to know that on average, for about each person that's unaccounted, each state loses between $1,500 to $2,000 per person, right? So think about like a family of four. A family of four means $80,000 per, per census year,
Mm.
right? And said differently, if each person watching this right now, we have about 142 people online, right? If each person just went and filled out the census now and got somebody else to fill out the census, we would be saving over $2 million a year for our community, right? Just because it's, you average it like $2,000 per person, and then $2,000 becomes 20 grand because it's 10 years, and then multiply that times the people, and it's crazy.
Wow. So that's 10 minutes every day, you guys, for 10 years of resources, basically. So get on it today. Okay. I just want to kind of recap this before I open it up for any other questions that we have, and let you get on with your day. But so the United States Congress, right,
Mm-hmm.
consists of two legislative bodies, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate, correct?
Almost correct, right? We
Oh,
have the U.S. House of Representatives, and that consists of Congress and the Senate.
okay.
But you're saying it right, right? Like you got the right idea, right? Like we have this legislative branch. There's two groups that create laws, and those two groups are Congress and the Senate. And both of those groups are elected by the people.
Okay. And they interact with each other.
Correct. They interact with each other because both of them need a vote for it to happen and be in agreement for something to be a law.
Okay. And how long are each of their terms?
So that's different, right? Like Congress is the shortest term. That's 2 years versus the Senate, which is a general political term.
So you vote for the Congress during midterm and the presidential election.
You do, and that's the best way to think about it. You see, you got it. You could school people. You voted, but you like ready,
Wow.
right?
Thank
And nah, that's good. That's exactly right, right? Like you like, yo, there's a presidential election every 4 years, so we vote during a president election, and then we vote during the mid-year, right? And that's a term used for halfway during the president's term is the mid-year, and we do vote for Congress then also.
Okay. Okay. And I have another question. Because I used to watch Parks and Rec,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to make jokes about filibusters, and I really want to know what a filibuster.
Oh, okay. So a filibuster is like, think of it as just like preventing something from happening, right? Like somebody who's just annoying and doesn't want a law to happen or doesn't want something to pass, they'll do something to prevent it from happening, and that could be like reading a book, right? That could be debating it and just keeping it going nonstop. And there are stories of people who've like read like the dictionary nonstop, so that way like, oh, I'm just gonna keep reading this. Because the thing is, once I yield to you, I can't get the floor back. So that's a term that's used, right? It's like, all right, I call you, you have the floor until you stop talking. So if you just keep on doing something, then that's a filibuster right there. And sometimes you could force a vote if you got the majority of the votes to kind of like stop it. But the other thing about that is it's kind of crazy because the Senate could change the rules. So that's why like this voting stuff is important and kind of figuring out like who's in charge of what, because they could be like, you know what, like these are the rules for doing this now.
Okay. I am Jessica said like a cock blocker.
Yeah, so you could think about it just like that, right? You could think about it like that. You can think about it as like a clout chaser, right? You could think about somebody like photobombing, like you got the perfect scene, everything's ready, and then somebody wants to come and throw deuces behind your head, and you're like, you see the picture, and you're like, wait, what just happened? You really just messed up my shine. You messed us from going forward, right?
Yeah.
And then, like I said too, if anybody has any questions, you could hit us up at Advancement Project. You can check out our website. We're happy to put together like actual educational and talking points around all of this.
Okay, amazing. All right, I'm just gonna go through these questions really quick while I have you here to make sure that there isn't anything else that we can answer before you go. Is there anything else you want to add, by the way, that I didn't ask?
Yeah, I think we have 35 days until the election, and democracy is really a participatory sport. We need everybody who's eligible to vote, to register to vote, and to create a plan, right? Whether you're voting by mass or voting by mail, we need individuals to vote. And if you're going to vote by mail, vote early. And if you vote early by mail, track your vote. You could go to your state's website to track, let's see if the vote was counted. Because what happens is sometimes, I'll give you an example. A state like Pennsylvania, you actually have to fill it out with either a blue or a black pen. So if you use a purple pen to fill out your ballot, it doesn't get counted. But what happens is they have to give you notice, like, hey, we give you 2 days to correct this. So the earlier you do it, the better off we'll be, and make sure that your vote is counted. And if you're going to vote in person, take your mask, get there early, vote in person. But we need everybody to vote. This is the first election where 1/3 of all eligible voters are people of color, right? Black, brown, Latinx folks. Black women there are 18 million eligible Black woman voters this election. There are 32 million Latinx voters. There are 30 million Black voters, right? And kind of like how we went through that, there's 3 separate co-equal branches of government that are essentially decided by the voters. And that's how much power we have, right? And we need everybody to show up, create a plan, execute your plan, follow Advancement Project online, and we'll help you develop a plan. We'll let you know what's going on. It's super, super important. Our lives and our livelihood depends on it, right? And I think it's important to know that there's no such thing as voter fraud, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of like misnomers. The president votes by mail. People in the military vote by mail. There are 6 states that people exclusively vote by mail. So the system is safe, but we need people to participate, and we need to make sure that our voices get heard, especially your generation, right? The biggest voting block this election is Gen Zs and younger millennials, which is dope because your group is kind of saying like, F this, right? Like, we want to be heard. We're not waiting until we get next. We're up now, and we need to change this system. It's making a difference, because when you think about what's being said, this is the first presidential election that I could think of where people aren't even talking about retirement, but they're talking about student loan debt, right? Because they're trying to earn your generation's vote.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, Jorge, thank you so much for the Advancement Project. I really appreciated having you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for
you too. Thank you so much.
And the Senate and the House of Representatives and what that looks like 40 times. I really appreciate it.
No, you did it. You did it. You got it. It's all in there now. Thank you for having us. Like I said, if anyone has any questions, check us out, Advancement Project's national office online at Advancement Project or advancementproject.org. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Deja, you play too much. You said please have him say the words office, talking, and call before you go. I hate you. Okay, you guys, I pinned ballotready.org one more time just so you guys can see what my cheat sheet is so that I can do the research. Again, it's super easy to understand. I am really appreciative that you guys came in. Remember that we're doing this again next week. Next week it is, hold on, let me just double check so I don't fuck this up. Next week we're talking about the Attorney General. That's what we're going to talk about, the Attorney General. Followed by the vice presidential debate next week featuring Kamala Harris, former Attorney General of California. You guys watch the debate. Also, all of the debates, like, stay informed, watch it in real time, and remember that your vote fucking matters. We gotta get this shit together. It matters. No, my computer's frozen. Everything's frozen. Okay, again, tune in next week. If you haven't registered to vote yet, please go to kianaledé.com/vote and do it now. And I'll talk to you guys next week. See ya.